Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. We went from winter to summer, I think. So hopefully everybody's been out and about and able to enjoy the weather. Our last meeting was super robust, and I guess, Matthew, before we get started, I'm gonna let you read the statement that we need to read.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So due to the safe at home, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm hearing an echo on my end. Is anyone else hearing that?
I hear that as well, yes.
I don't know what to do about it. Go ahead and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if everybody who's not speaking, let's see, would mute for now. Looks like everybody is. Sharon, does that sound better?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, that's great. So there will certainly be an opportunity for some discussion today. But for now, we'll just stay muted and hopefully that'll solve the issue. So I'll read the Safer at Home order message. So due to the Safer at Home order issued by Governor Cooper, members of the Bicycle Pedestrian Active Mobility Advisory Committee are participating virtually. All members will vote by roll call. A member will be recognized, at which time the member will state his or her vote. So Sharon, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Hey, AJ, Kelly, Keith, they snuck in there. Everybody's doing well. First things are the agenda, are the minutes from last meeting. We had a lot of discussion on that meeting, and I think Matthew did a great job capturing all of that. Was there anything that we missed? No? Any corrections, additions? Okay. Motion to approve? John? Michael, you want a second? Okay.
I'll second.
Thanks, Greg. I think we had 2 seconds there, but.
Oh, okay. Either way.
Yep. Great. Sorry, I'm just making sure I close the right tab so I don't get lost here. From that discussion.
Sharon, I need to go through and just do the roll call vote.
Yep. Getting ahead of us.
So yeah, that's all right. I will. I'll just go through the roll call here. Keith, how do you vote? All right. Greg, Eric. All right. John. Let's see, made the motion. Michael made the second. Donna, how do you vote?
Approve.
All right. Scott?
Approve.
All right. Sharon?
Approve.
And AJ?
Approve.
All right. The item passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so from that discussion that we had last month on trying to hone in on some actionable goals for this committee, we pulled together a proposed list of targets. And from this, what we'd like to do today is just run through each goal. Again, talk about these, see if there's anything that should be taken off or added to each of these. Confirm that this is what we want to do for now. Other things are definitely going to be rising up. And then what Matthew will do is just share these with the city manager's office to say, hey, this is what the Bicycle Pedestrian Active Mobility Committee has talked about. This is what they'd like to begin working on, supporting, or accomplish. Are we in line with your intention, and are there any other steps we have to take? Matthew, do you want to talk any further about that process? I don't think it's necessarily permission related, just alignment related.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So I think the discussion, we've spent a fair amount of time discussing what you think that the group should work on to this point. And I think with last month's discussion about that topic, kind of have a work program proposed now, and it's just time to discuss that and take action on it if you'd like.
Any questions around that? Comments from you guys? Okay. Did everyone have time to read through this that Matthew sent in the email with the minutes in the agenda? Okay, I'm just going to dive in then. I've got it open in front of me. So the first goal was around the bike-friendly city application. We had seen previously the report from the last submitted application. We are currently at bronze level, and we're resubmitting this year. I know Michael, Matthew, and some of the others have worked on that process before and had a little insight into it, and we've seen what the gaps were, and we had talked about those. So again, this is just kind of creating some actionable steps that we could take to promote short-term this year's application, but then I think we have an ultimate goal of elevating us up to silver level. So any discussion or comments around that particular goal? I think one of the things we saw as sort of low-hanging fruit for right now, given that this is going to come up at the end of the summer, was encouraging businesses to apply for the bike-friendly business designation. Michael and I are meeting tomorrow with Visit Winston-Salem to talk about that. I feel like they can, this could be a good promotional tool for them as they market our area as an outdoor recreation center. They have a network of hotels and restaurants and attractions that I feel like they could push this out to and encourage those, Renolda House and Sika and all of those locations to become bike-friendly locations and get that designation. I went and looked at what's on the website right now, and there are only 2 businesses listed, and they're not what you would expect. Like, I think Camino did have this designation at one time, but maybe they didn't renew. There's a realtor group and another location that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But anyway, so some of those locations, if somebody wanted to reach out to DADA and somebody wanted to reach out to Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership, we could do the same thing with them, just try to encourage more businesses to become aware. There may be, some local running shops or bike shops who should consider applying. Any other ideas around that? Or questions, comments?
I had a quick question about is there a deadline on the submittal of the application or the becoming a silver level community? Is there a time frame or a deadline or an application period that we need to meet for that?
Yeah, I think the deadline for this year is in August. For some reason, August 10th is in my head, but that may not be exactly right. A lot of the gaps that were there were infrastructure related things where we've made some progress as a community, but we haven't really gotten too far. I would say it's probably doubtful that we would reach silver this year unless they were really willing to look at here's what's in the works and not what's actually happened so far, because it's miles of greenway and some of those kinds of things. But I think that once we get through this year and we start to build awareness and get some more support around this, and we start to see some of these future DOT projects come to fruition, then it will be up to us. You can apply annually, but the recertification is every 3 years or 4 years.
It's every 4 years that you
4 years.
need to reapply to to update your status, but you can reapply more frequently than that. Say if we added 10 miles of greenway and 50 miles of bike lanes, then we would want to get ahead of that 4-year window and reapply more quickly than that. So,
Right.
Matthew,
So I think
this is John. Is there anything else that we have to do to maintain our status? Do we always have to, if we want to maintain the bronze, do we have to show forward progress? Is there some test that we have to meet?
not necessarily, no. It's I think what has gotten us to bronze, those activities and those infrastructure improvements are pretty well established. So I'm pretty confident that we would at least maintain bronze. The work really is to get, what improvements have we made? What additional steps have we taken over the last 4 years to get to the next level?
I've got a quick question, Matthew, about that. So, I'm looking at the key steps to silver, and I mean, I know a lot of the bicycle infrastructure that's pretty black and white, whether that's there. But another one is bicycle safety education, and obviously, and I know firsthand that we've been doing a lot of that. But it's not necessarily something that we have recorded in a fine document that states every time that is kind of engaged. How best can I support you and just the parts that I've been associated with to get you information that will help with that?
Sure. I guess as it relates to safe routes to school and the bicycle education that goes on through that, I think that's where the record keeping comes in. Of we met with we performed education at this school and we're able to reach this number of students. That kind of, they won't necessarily dig into a report in much detail, but to have those numbers is great. And we can certainly include those numbers of how many students and how many schools we've worked with and how many students have gone through the program from its inception. And those numbers we can certainly include in the application.
Okay.
Oh, one other thing, Matt. So would we include something like the community bike ride? For example, I talked with Amy Easter and they're starting up the community bike ride in May. Would that something we would put in the application also?
Certainly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And the formation of this group and, the adoption of the bicycle master plan a year and a half ago or so. So all of those activities are items that we would include in the application.
Let me ask a question while we're rolling through these, because one of the things we'll need to do, in addition to just decide on these goals and the steps we want to take, is kind of break out into some subgroups. So as we go through these, think about your own time commitment, capacity, and interest level, and which of these you'd like to personally work on. And some of them, again, will be short-term goals. Like we've got an application that we're going to try to meet a deadline on in August. So knocking out some of these things immediately would be good. And some of them will be long-term goals, like the rail trail. And then maybe at the end, I'll try to keep an eye on the time and make sure we have 6 or 7 minutes at the end of the meeting to just raise our hands and say, I want to work on this one and this one, or whatever that might look like. Any others there?
Sharon, I had told you at the last meeting that I would dig into the bicycle-friendly business piece, and I don't know, like, if there's a particular number that would make our application better or not, but I'd be happy to. I did dig into that. I apologize, I don't have my notes. I've decided at the last minute to meet from home today, but I did kind of get the criteria and kind of review, and if it's helpful to join you and Michael tomorrow, I could probably do that. I could also, I was thinking about Mark Owens, who's with Greater Winston-Salem Incorporated. We could probably get involved. But from the business component, I'd be more than happy to participate there, especially if it would help move the needle.
Okay, that's great. I think that meeting is at 10 tomorrow, and it's a Zoom. I can send you, I'll just send you the link.
And I don't want to just muscle my way into your meeting. I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's our meeting, so anyone is welcome to join that. That'd be great. Keith, I'm going to ask this. I don't want to side rail us too much. And you may not remember off the top of your head, but did you feel like that application cost for a business was high? Off the top of your head.
I don't remember I don't remember the cost. Was there in terms of application fee, or like in terms of the infrastructure involved? Like I was thinking about bike racks, like just cursory level, what I would have to do to make changes. And if I'm going off memory here, it was like my employee's been clamoring for a shower for a long time anyway, because in this new store we didn't do one. It was like a shower and some bike racks, and there was definitely some investment. But I don't remember the cost. I apologize. I don't remember.
I don't either.
Yeah. And
I know that Amy had said it was low, and I do remember not thinking it was that low for, if you're looking at trade street shops or a struggling restaurant right now. I felt like it was a little high for them, but we can discuss that.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw when I looked into kind of the business-friendly designation for businesses, the shower piece is a little tough, I think, right now because of the COVID restrictions. The cleaning guidelines are a little stringent. And where I work out, they don't allow the showers to be used because of the level of cleaning that has to be done after every single use. So that was a little bit of so I just kind of saw it as a barrier a little bit. But then I was also wondering, I know that in that space, that would create an incremental move definitely toward bike friendly, but is there some other space that's the thing I was thinking about looking at the report. Is there another space doable that would really give an incremental move towards a better rating? And that's what I really couldn't tell what
I think that's where we get into sort of the long-term goal on that designation when we're looking for silver status. So we've got things that we want to do now, and then things that we would look at from that report, and also from the report that we'll get this year after the application, to see what those long-term goals might be. And long-term might be next year, or it might be 2 years away. But I think you're leading right into that sort of how we divvy that up from what we can do right now and what we need to do to actually reach that silver designation. And once we have, sort of a subgroup who have said, this is what we're going to work on, that would be exactly what that group would dig into. Any other comments on that one?
Sharon, I had a couple notes to share about.
Sure.
One, bicycle-friendly business. The next deadline for that application is June 10th. So that's rapidly approaching. And the other thing I wanted to say was embedded in the tasks for this goal is infrastructure priorities. And that was one thing I had mentioned previously, was we could certainly use this committee's help to help prioritize projects from the bicycle master plan. So we have that adopted plan with, I think, 17 or so priority corridors, but we could use some further refining on that from this group, especially to help us determine which of those projects we should pursue, which should be priorities for us to pursue next. So yeah, I think that all works towards the bicycle-friendly community designation goal. But there are quite a few subtasks within there, and that's one that is certainly important and one that would help us significantly.
Right. Thanks, Matthew. And that, for those who as you look at this, that's kind of the step 2 here, but I think that that's a good one to just underline for really all of our work, is to remember that we have that master plan, and should be looking at those priorities and seeing how they support this and our other tasks here.
And that was a stated goal in the bicycle master plan, was to get to that next level. So a lot of the recommendations within that plan are geared towards, the feedback we had received from the League of American Bicyclists from our last application.
Is there a year goal, a target date in that, or it was open?
It was open, yeah.
Okay. So those are going to go hand in hand then. Okay. The second goal here was similar, but the walk-friendly community designation for the city. If I'm correct, we have not submitted for this in the past, so this would be new. Is that correct?
We actually had submitted, but we just did not receive a designation.
Okay. At all. How long ago was that?
Oh, it must be 5 years ago now.
Okay. So this is similar application and process. I have not looked at this website at all. I'll say that up front. So I'm not as familiar with the criteria. And we haven't shared a report from that. But similar, we would break this into a subgroup, review what's required. The walkable Winston-Salem pedestrian plan would fit into this, or perhaps as that plan is adopted, this might be a goal that's a part of that plan. Any questions, comments here? And again, we're going to marry that walkable Winston-Salem plan that Jason Reyes recently shared in with this walk-friendly community designation.
Matthew, do we have a copy of this? I know we didn't get any of the designation, but that scorecard was helpful for the bicycle. Do we have kind of a scorecard to say kind of where we landed in the different categories that are evaluated?
We do get feedback from this group, and I can certainly dig that up, and if you want to review that at one of our future meetings, I'd be happy to prepare that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
We stepped this out into kind of like, there's a draft plan circulating right now that a lot of work has gone into, a lot of steering, more than a year's worth of work has gone into with that walkable Winston-Salem plan. They're looking for public input through, I think, the end of this month or so. And then it will go up through the channels before reaching city council, and that's likely to be June or July. Is that right? We think maybe.
Yeah, the timing isn't 100% right now, but there are this summer sometime would be the goal.
Any questions on that or feedback from your community members if you've shared it or had conversations around it? I haven't heard any feedback either, just some. Okay. And then we would, just as a reminder.
Oh, Sharon, I just have a question about that, and I guess just as it kind of relates to goal number 2 overall, is the plan for those of us who do end up kind of focusing on that goal to review that and provide input like in the next 2 weeks while that public feedback period is open? Just trying to understand like the urgency or timing around that.
Yeah, and not necessarily urgency. I think the plan is, they've come up with prioritized recommendations based on this 12 to 14 month process that has happened up until February. So what they're doing now is just doing one last round of community input to ensure that the way that they have come up with the priorities, the layering and the metrics that they used were the correct ones, that the priorities that they are suggesting, and they is Alta Design Group, so third party, not connected to the city at all, has the priorities that they put into that plan are the ones the community agrees on, that everyone who has interest and is willing to provide comment has had a chance to do so. And then it will walk its way up to ultimately going to city council where funding priorities would be decided. So there'll be a little bit of a second step on that, is once it reaches that point, I guess city council could say, nah, we'd rather do this and do something different. Or they could say, yes, we agree with that. Here's what we have for allocation, or here's what we have. And Matthew, I'm probably stepping way into your territory here and don't know nearly as much about this process as you do, so should probably stop talking. So it's not an urgency, just that this is kind of where they are, if that makes sense, AJ. Matthew, feel free to reiterate or correct anything I said.
Yeah, I think that's in line. So, we'll gather feedback, public input on the draft plan, and then city council will have the opportunity to review that and adopt it if they wish. And then once it's adopted, that opens the doors for us to be able to submit projects from it through, whatever funding opportunities are out there through the state or federal government. And then, that's really the first step in being able to submit projects for funding. And there is no funding necessarily tied to the plan itself. It's a plan for how, we would like to invest future funds in pedestrian infrastructure and policy improvements. So, it's the adoption of the plan, in a sense, is step number one. And then it's identifying funding and going through design and construction processes. So it certainly is not the end of the process when the plan is adopted. It's just the beginning of a new phase, essentially.
Great, thank you. And so that's where the bicycle plan lives right now as well. It has been adopted by city council, but we need to pitch in and identify those funding projects that then resources get looked at, where Matthew and others start looking for funding sources and that sort of thing. Does that help, AJ? Did I actually answer your question?
Yeah, I think you did. I guess I was just thinking about it. Sounds like we're all possibly less familiar with the walk-friendly community requirements than the bike-friendly one. So I was just thinking through that lens, is that something that we need to try to knock out while this public comment period is open? But it doesn't sound like that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, that's probably a great point, is just to look at and maybe even mention that to Jason Reyes, that we are looking at that and marry that in as a goal, because I do not think it's mentioned anywhere in the plan right now. But I honestly don't remember all 98 pages or that are in that right now.
I wanted to ask a quick question, if I could. Is the other communities around the Triad, are any of those designated as walk-friendly communities? And what have they done that's different than what we're proposing?
I think that's a great question, Greg, and that would show up on that website. Matthew, do you know off the top of your head if anyone locally is?
I'm actually at the website right now, and I just shared a link to that so everybody can look at it. I see Davidson listed, Asheville, Charlotte, and they are at the silver level.
It looks like Asheville, Cherry, Charlotte, and Raleigh all have silver.
Yeah.
And then Boone got honorable mention, which I didn't know was a designation.
Interesting. Okay.
So, Greensboro, High Point, Burlington, or other adjoining communities have not, don't have a designation or have not applied for that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I don't see any of those communities listed on the Walk Friendly Community website.
I guess we wouldn't know whether or not they've applied. We just know
Right.
whether or not they've received.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, any other comment or question on that one? Okay, I'm going to move on to number 3 was around.
Sharon, just a quick comment on the designation for the bike friendly one. One of the things that Matthew mentioned was that, you know, we need to have the priorities for the projects. And that's something that sounds like easily we could do. I mean, can we, you know, take that as an assignment for the next meeting that we basically recommend the priorities? Is that something we should be doing?
Yes, absolutely.
So why don't we just make that one of our objectives for the next meeting, and we will just basically, you know, prioritize what we think is the right sequence of those for Matthew. Matthew, does that sound like what you need?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So with like I mentioned with the bicycle master plan, you know, we have that list of priority corridors.
Right.
There's more than what we can pursue immediately. So refining those priorities would be a great task for this group to undertake.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, John. And I think that will lead much of this other work as well. Okay. The third goal was around communication and awareness, which has been discussed really since our very first introductory meeting. How do we increase awareness and communication of pedestrian laws, right-of-way, non-vehicular safety, micromobility options, and also access, where we have trails and bike lanes and bus routes and all of those things that impact micromobility. And there are a number of tasks that were outlined under this, and I will open this one for comment.
You know, the one thing I had a question about, and I definitely think prevention and promotion is above this, but I do think there needs to be a consideration towards enforcement. You know, and I don't know what tools we have available within the public safety department for evaluation and looking into some of the areas that seem to have, you know, higher risk, and areas where perhaps, you know, I know that they'll do, like, you know, on certain streets where they know the speed is high, they'll put some squad cars there and they'll police that area and people will slow down for a time being. I didn't see that listed, and I'm not sure if that's a discussion point that we want to take on, or whether that's something that's really out of our control. I'm just throwing it out there.
I am totally on board with adding that in as another bullet here. I think that's part of building awareness, is building public safety awareness. Any others agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think kind of a two-pronged approach, like us, you know, promoting it through whatever outlets, you know, via social media or whatever. But I think, you know, it's gotta be enforced at the same time to be effective. So I think that's a really important point.
Yep.
Is there any, I don't even know if this exists. Is there any like contact in the police force or public safety in general that is like pedestrian and bicycle focused? like, is there any department that looks specifically at, like, consolidates issues related to that, or is it just kind of roll up however things roll up in police departments? I don't even know if that's a legitimate question, but
I think it's a great question.
Sharon, I can handle that one. So we work primarily with the downtown bike patrol, and because they have that firsthand experience on bicycles, and then a lot of the work that they do downtown is walking related. So they do have probably a stronger focus on bike and pedestrian issues, or probably the strongest focus of any division within the police department. So Sergeant Kevin Bowers is who we typically work with from the police department, and whether it's cycling issues, and I know Sergeant Bowers and others from the bike patrol help with safe routes to school, education, and helmet fittings. But they also help with electric scooters and micromobility downtown, and helping with enforcement and education of those activities. So he certainly is our primary contact, and the bike patrol more generally is our the group we typically work with most often.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for bringing that up, Scott. I think that's a great point.
Well, and again, I don't want to distract from, the positive aspects of promotion and of, attraction to this. But I just know that, there's enough distracted driving, there's enough issues that exist out there that perhaps if people knew that that folks really do care about this, care about the speed, care about how close you're coming to cyclists, care about whether you're yielding to a pedestrian in a crosswalk, I think that would also help just to from promotion standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's all part of the same circle, right? You need to educate drivers that they should yield and encourage our public safety team to enforce that when people don't, all of that. I think it's all part of the same circle. So I think that's a great addition.
So we have been a part of the Watch for Me NC campaign. I don't think we are this year, but exactly what you're saying, it has been taking place downtown, especially last year with the pandemic. It kind of slowed things down and derailed a little bit, but those activities are taking place. But maybe, Matthew, somehow we get this committee tied into that initiative. Like I said, I guess I know we're not signed up technically this year, but
that's right. Yeah, so you're correct. The Watch for Me NC campaign that we participated in, there was an enforcement component to that, and I know the police department did they did perform enforcement activities as part of Watch for Me. So there's nothing, you're right, we're not officially part of Watch for Me NC this year, but there's nothing holding us back from conducting those kinds of activities again, and conducting education and encouragement and enforcement activities. So that's something that can continue, just with coordination with the police department on how that takes place.
Great. In one of the Trail Summit presentations, someone from Visit North Carolina presented, and they're doing a similar campaign. And I got excited during the meeting and went onto the website, and I thought it was incredibly expensive. You have to basically pay to play to be part of their educational campaign. And I thought their costs were probably prohibitive. But still, I guess any education is a good thing, no matter where it's coming from. Okay, any other comments on that one? Sorry to cut someone off.
I was just going to add, I guess with that, it's great to know we have the Downtown Bike Patrol kind of as an existing contact to work with. And I wonder what opportunities going through them to kind of spread that outside of what seems focused in the downtown area, to bring that maybe more broadly through the police department. And also, I don't know if there's like code enforcement or others in the city that could end up taking part in that. their roles are usually enforcement, but I think they can also initially help with awareness, even if it's not ticketing a driver or a homeowner where a bike lane was just installed that's parking in it or something. I think we put a lot of new infrastructure in and people don't know the rules or how to interact with it. And we have city employees who are, there and interacting with these folks who could help raise awareness in that way.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Thanks, AJ.
Matthew, that kind of brings just a thought to my mind. Like, so when these new lanes are added and they are riding down a neighborhood in front of multiple residents, is there any kind of letter or anything that is sent out to those homeowners and businesses to say, hey, this is in front of you now, this is kind of the guidelines and rules? Because yeah, along with parking, you always see people putting their yard waste in the lanes as well. But yeah, I didn't know if any kind of efforts were taken.
We don't necessarily send out a letter to residents along those routes. What we have developed is some educational materials. So if there's an issue, we have materials that we can either give to the police department or, like AJ said, code enforcement to post on, whether it's on vehicles that are parked in the bike lane or, educational materials we can leave at the house about not blocking the bike lane with garbage cans or other debris. So we can certainly respond when there are issues like that. We have the materials and kind of the processes in place to be able to do that.
I know that it would be fairly costly to do so, but a proactive, as I know they just did Sheroes all through my neighborhood last summer, which is great, but a proactive kind of something that would generate some excitement and ownership and neighborhood pride maybe could be good, but I know that doing postcards and that kind of thing is also very costly. Any other comments on this one? I'm watching the time. I want to give us at least a few minutes to talk about the last one, and then again, some time for hand raising and volunteering before we close up. Okay. So goal number 4 was around exploring the rail trail opportunities within the Winston-Salem metro area. And this was just that we would research and support those options related to rail to trail greenway opportunities. And there were 3 tasks mentioned. We've got the Long Branch extension, the Stratford Road corridor, and then other opportunities within Winston-Salem. Any other comments or questions, additions to this one?
I had mentioned previously that the NCC had some conversations around this, and I went and dug up some old emails from 2018 and 19, and there's really not much there other than there has been preliminary conversations. It just seems like what I'm seeing is the elusive North Fork Southern contact. It seems like I don't have a contact here, but I think I have a means to look for one. But yeah, it just seems like a couple folks were just like, we had reached out and never heard back. So yeah, I guess that's why I say elusive. But I know that the cycling center had also worked with a local designer on kind of a plan. I think the conversations they had were like, well, we wouldn't want to pull up the railroad tracks because, we might use them again. So they were kind of coming with some, and I might have talked about this last time, but developing a system that goes over top of the rail bed. And so, a hand built. And I think they're doing that in some other places. It's and Matthew could tell me, instead of like removing it, you're modifying it to use, and then it's kind of time capsule. The tracks are there if and when ever need to be revisited. But to me, that doesn't seem like the most ideal scenario, building a temporary infrastructure over something like that, because I mean the costs would still be super high. But that's kind of where we even had a rendition drafted up. So I got like this nice little poster I found somewhere. I don't have it here with me, but to kind of give you the visual. But yeah, it was like Hammerhead Designs had done a design that would kind of like a boardwalk almost sit on top of the tracks. So that's what preliminary work that we've done, but it really is nowhere at this point, other than there is a lot of interest though, as we know, across the community for something like that.
Yeah, I believe there was a group out of the Center for Design and Innovation 8 or 9 years ago that had actually explored this as well and written a grant to some organization. I do not know who. I just know that they did not receive the funding, and then it kind of dropped. But as the CDI was putting in their building, which is now right along Long Branch, they were looking at some connectivity around Salem College and Winston-Salem State, and sort of extending or putting a route alongside some of the railway there. Any other, I predict obstacles here. I mean, I guess if a railway has not been used in as many years as that one has been sitting, but yet ownership doesn't seem to want to give it up, there's obviously an obstacle there. But I still think it's worth exploring. Sure, go ahead.
Who would be the kind of the ultimate negotiator on behalf of the public interest in that? I mean, is that a state issue? Is that a municipal issue? It just seems like, I mean, it's, some of these citizen-based inquiries are just going to get batted down because there's no teeth to them. So I'm just like wondering, who ultimately do we need on our side to gain any influence and make sure that those inquiries are answered?
It's a great question.
I can speak to that one a little bit. I think it depends on who's managing the project. Where does the project come from? Where's the funding come from to actually design and construct a trail? And then it's that entity, whether that's the city or I'm not sure who else it would be who would design and construct that trail. I mean, that's with other greenway projects that we have, it's the city that pursues the funding either from the state or from the MPO. And then once we have that funding, then we are managing that project. So right now there is no project for that rail line or for that one specifically. But I think the Long Branch Trail is an example of that's a project, a feasibility study that the city is conducting right now to figure out what the obstacles are and what the issues are if we were going to build a trail extending the Long Branch Trail. So I think that we would follow something similar pattern for other corridors as well.
I kind of see the relation with the Acosta Trail in Brevard. It stretches from Brevard. It's a rail bed from Brevard to Hendersonville, and I think they've been working on that for about 20 years. But I think it's a foundation. They created a foundation, I believe, and I could be off, but to take those efforts on, and I'm sure it's with collaboration with DOT and everything. But I don't know exactly where it is, but I feel like I saw an email maybe at least 6 months ago saying that it sounded really promising because they had a lot of pushback from the county commissioners, wanting industry to come back. And I think maybe that they've seen that tourism is the industry that they need to promote. So I was there recently and nothing has taken place physically to change anything, but it seems like there's some more momentum. But I don't know if anybody has any contacts on that project. I mean, I'm sure I probably know some. I know the bike shops in Brevard, but I don't know who's directly involved firsthand. But that could be somewhere we talk to them and maybe learn a little bit from their experience.
Probably a great idea. I know Greensboro has just recently gotten Rails to Trails Conservancy grant, which has allowed them to finish up the last little section of their greenway into downtown. I've been following that on social media and some other things, but I don't know anyone directly involved.
So that one, I know a little bit about that. That was one of the tours for Piedmont Legacy Trails Summit recently. And, it's a partnership between the city and the Chamber of Commerce. So the Chamber of Commerce actually has a group called Action Greensboro underneath the chamber. And one of their projects is the downtown greenway. So Michael, you mentioned, having nonprofits, involved. That's a case where, they've been very successful having the Chamber of Commerce actually have a dedicated team. So there's, they have staff that's dedicated to that project specifically. And it was a great example, and certainly, a good example of how, a nonprofit like that can be involved with trail development and how successful that can be.
I know that Amy Easter, John, you mentioned Amy earlier. She's the lead for Winston-Salem Cycling Advocacy Network. And yes. Amy has mentioned sort of seeing her entity in that role potentially as well, as being a nonprofit partner on some of these projects once we identify what our priorities are going to be around the cycling side of things.
Yeah, on the rail conversion, I'm not, should we be, one thing is, what can we do to help Matthew out on this? And two, I'm just a suggestion, should we benchmark, with some of these other communities that have converted it? Is it worth, maybe getting Rails to Trail Conservancy, get some help from them or some guidance on that? I'm kind of thinking in my mind, what can we do to further enhance this or kind of move it along at least a little bit?
Yeah, that, John, I was kind of thinking about that as well. And I do think this subgroup could reach out to the Rails to Trails Conservancy and other organizations to get some data around tourism. I think that is a huge factor in getting support for this is having numbers to put in front of whether it's city council or the chamber or whoever it is, or the fundraiser if it reaches a point where we're engaging a nonprofit organization to help raise money. They're collecting data on tourism. So if you're driving to Pennsylvania to ride a rail trail and you're spending, 4 nights in bed and breakfast and you're visiting a bike shop to replace a tire or a chain or, all of those factors, I think are good data collection for this subgroup to pull together, as well as comparisons. So Cary, Raleigh, Brevard, Greensboro, any of these other communities within North Carolina where we live under the same rights of ownership, collecting that comparable data for communities as well. I think you're right on target with what this group could contribute there.
Well, I would volunteer to reach out to the Rails Trail Conservancy and try to get some of those statistics that you mentioned, that would help.
I think that'd be great. So that's a great segue in our last 5 minutes for folks to kind of say which of these they'd like to volunteer to work on. And so if it's helpful, Matthew, I'll just go through and one by one ask people rather than saying, hey, everyone raise your hands at once. And John, if you want to start, since you were already there, do you have a sense right now of which of these you'd like to be part of for an active subgroup?
Well, yeah, certainly the rail thing, I would definitely be involved in that. And I said, I'll reach out to see if I can get some data on the benefits, like you mentioned.
AJ, I'm just going to go in order that I see you on the screen.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'd probably say the goal number 3, the communication and awareness first.
Okay. Greg?
I'm already part of the Creative Corridors Coalition and working with the city on the multi-use path. So I guess as far as the committee goes, I guess I'd be interested in probably goal number 1 is getting the community partners to support bicycle friendly community status. But if that's what you're asking, I guess I don't know if that's a committee per se, but that'd be something I'd be interested in.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. Thanks, Greg. Scott?
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in looking into and helping out with the Rails to Trails. You know, I've been a longtime supporter of that organization, and I just think that it would be, if there's some way that we could help increase awareness about that and potentially use that being separate from traffic, that would be great. I mean, I live close to the Muddy Creek Greenway, and that thing is used all the time. So yeah, I'd be happy to be involved in helping out and working, whether it be contacting you know, someone in the state legislature regarding if it crosses into their district and getting their support for something like this, whatever, I'm happy to help.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. Michael?
Yeah, I can certainly help out with the bicycle benefits program for the businesses and stuff. Be happy to do legwork and yeah, whatever's need for that. So.
Okay, great. Donna?
I'd like to, goal number 2, achieve walk-friendly community designation.
Great, thank you. And Kelly? I guess, Kelly, do you count? No? Okay.
I don't think so, Matthew. I don't know.
No, you're safe.
But you're busy.
But you can if you want.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. Keith, I kind of intentionally skipped over you. I don't know how you and I would divide, maybe 2 and 2 or all of us on all 4, but if you have a strong leaning towards any of these over the other.
Not particularly, but, you know, I'm happy to continue to, you know, if I can use my whatever position to recruit businesses, I'd be happy to do that. So both of the community awareness or the community designation efforts, but honestly, I'll be a soldier wherever I need to go.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of viewing myself in the same boat. Okay. And then, John, I do think you have a great point that we've mentioned this sort of loosely a couple of times in the past to review the city's bike plan, which again was adopted a couple of years ago and is sitting there kind of waiting for us to grab hold of it and put together some priorities. So if we could make that our, in addition to the list that we just came up with getting some action together on some of these goals that we've just agreed upon, if we could also all review that bike plan that is on the city's website, and we can resend that again if you don't have that link or know where to find it. Just review that and come back to the next meeting prepared to finalize and sign off on, I guess, what we consider our priorities to be from that.
Just a clarification, the priorities being the priority for each of the corridors, right?
Matthew, do you want to clarify what you need for us? And yes,
Sure,
Scott,
yeah.
we will resend.
There were, I think, 17 or so priority corridors identified in the plan. And I think what would be helpful is to have you all weigh in on which of those corridors, you know, are the priorities within the priorities, essentially. So, you know, what essentially a ranking of those priorities so that we can have some guidance on which to begin design on first. Because like I said, we can't begin design, we can't work on design for all of those corridors. We'll have to narrow it down and identify some priorities within those corridors.
So Matt, do we need to rank all 17, or we pick like maybe the top 5 or 6 and rank?
Exactly, yeah. I think if you looked at the top 5 or 6, that would give us good guidance on where to begin.
Okay.
So maybe that would help us simplify if everybody comes prepared on our main meeting with what they believe our top 5 are, and then we can just either numerically rank those or talk through those. And there may be some that have been accomplished, am I right? That were taken off of that. I'll have to review it. I don't want to speak out of turn too much on that.
Yeah, there may be certain, you know, maybe not the entire corridor, but segments of corridors that, you know, have been accomplished or are in the works right now.
Okay. Does that sound like a plan for everyone? Come to the main meeting prepared with what you believe the next step should be. Okay. Any questions? We went through a lot and we're just a little past 10 o'clock. We all clear on where we're kind of going from here? Awesome. Okay, anyone else interested in attending the meeting with Visit Winston-Salem? I'll tell you, they invited their entire marketing committee to what I thought was going to be an introductory conversation with me and one other person. So I feel like as many of us as want to attend a Zoom chat tomorrow with Visit Winston-Salem marketing team are welcome to attend. Keith, I'll forward you the link for sure. And Matthew, I think you were considering, but maybe I'll send it to you just in case if I didn't already.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all. I think we're getting somewhere. It's nice to have some direction and momentum. Right. Have a great rest of April and email anytime, and we'll talk again in May. Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.
Thanks.